The text of this podcast was generated by Claude Sonnet 4.0, an AI large language model developed by Anthropic. The artificial voices of this podcast were generated by 11 Labs, and the world wouldn't be the same without Melty's Chorus application that juggles multiple AI models at once. Welcome to Public Courts, the podcast where we dig into the stories behind America's recreational facilities. I'm Sarah Chen, and with me today is my co-host,
Mike Rodriguez. Today we're diving into a story that sounds like it came straight out of corporate espionage, but it's actually happening in our public parks. Sarah, when you first told me about this, I thought you were describing some kind of conspiracy theory.
I wish it were Mike. But we've got United States Tennis Association board meeting minutes, internal park department emails, and a paper trail that reads like a playbook for corporate warfare. Today we're talking about how the United States Tennis Association, or USTA for short, has been systematically working to prevent pickleball from expanding on public courts.
And Seattle serves as our case study. Sarah, set the scene for us. What's happening in Seattle?
Picture this. It's 2022 and Seattle Parks has a plan. Pickleball is exploding in popularity. We're talking 50% year-over-year growth. So they develop a three-pronged strategy. Add pickleball lines to some of their underused tennis courts, convert some long-neglected courts, and eventually build dedicated facilities. Sounds reasonable, right?
Makes sense. Meet demand where it exists.
Exactly. But then something strange happens. In 2023, Seattle Parks announces they're going to add pickleball lines to 3 of the 6 tennis courts at Solstice Park. The pickleball community is thrilled. And then, nothing. The plan gets canceled,
Just like that?
just like that. And here's the kicker. Since then, Seattle Parks has created exactly 0 new public pickleball courts. Despite the mayor himself saying, "We need more pickleball courts," it's as simple as that.
So, what changed? What happened behind the scenes?
That's where our story really begins. Enter the United States Tennis Association and what I can only describe as a coordinated campaign to protect tennis real estate. Their words, not mine. Mike, I want to read you something directly from USTA board meeting minutes from January 2023. The chairman, Brian Hainline, tells the board that a 2-year plan is needed to address critical issues such as pickleball.
Critical issues. They're talking about pickleball like it's a national emergency.
It gets better. By March 2023, they're discussing what they call a multi-pronged approach to promote tennis and combat the effect of pickleball. By June, they're using military language, talking about how to arm advocates to protect against pickleball.
Arm advocates? This is starting to sound like they're preparing for war.
The language is incredible. They talk about defending tennis-related investments and the need to protect tennis real estate. But here's what really gets me. They're talking about public courts. Courts built with taxpayer money that belong to the community.
So, what's their strategy? How do you fight a sport that people clearly want to play?
2-pronged approach. First, position themselves as trusted advisors to parks departments. Second, mobilize what they call tennis advocates to oppose pickleball expansion at the grassroots level.
And Seattle becomes one of their testing grounds?
Exactly. In summer 2023, USTA conducts what they call a Park Agency Tennis Assessment of Seattle's program. They hold multiple meetings with park officials, present themselves as neutral experts, and then deliver recommendations that are anything but neutral.
What kind of recommendations?
Oh, this is where it gets really brazen. They recommend that Seattle Park stop adding pickleball lines to tennis courts, remove existing pickleball lines from any location with 3 or more courts, and abandon plans to convert underused tennis courts to pickleball.
Wait, remove existing lines? Lines that are already being used by pickleball players?
38 courts worth of lines, Mike. Following their recommendations to the letter would eliminate pickleball access to 38 existing and planned courts.
That's stunning. And Seattle Parks went along with this?
Here's where the story gets really interesting. Right around the time USTA is conducting their assessment, something curious happens at Solstice Park. For 9 days after Seattle Parks announces their pickleball plan, they receive zero feedback from tennis players. Then suddenly, starting on day 10, they get flooded with coordinated emails from tennis advocates,
Coordinated how?
all sent to the same 6 park officials, all following similar talking points. And here's the kicker. Someone had posted an official-looking notice on the tennis courts asking people to email the Parks Department with their concerns. Problem is, it wasn't actually from the Parks Department. Someone was impersonating city officials. And it worked. Within weeks, Seattle Parks reverses course on Solstice. No pickleball lines.
Sarah, I have to ask, is there a smoking gun here? Direct evidence that USTA orchestrated these campaigns?
The closest we get is USTA's own board minutes, where they talk about arming advocates to protect against pickleball. And then we see these coordinated campaigns pop up right when USTA is working with local parks departments. The timing is suspicious.
But the real smoking gun is what happens next, right? The results?
Exactly. By April 2024, USTA is reporting to their board that they've saved 600 tennis courts nationwide through their advocacy efforts. 600 courts, Mike. They're treating this like a victory lap.
And meanwhile, what's happening to pickleball players?
They're getting squeezed out. In Seattle, the number of pickleball players has grown sevenfold since 2017, but the number of courts has only tripled.
Let's talk about the broader implications here. What does this mean for public recreation policy?
It raises fundamental questions about how we allocate public resources. Should an established sport be able to block access for an emerging sport, even when demand clearly exists?
And there's a generational aspect here too, right? Pickleball attracts older adults who might not otherwise be active.
Absolutely. Pickleball is often called the fastest growing sport in America, and it's particularly popular with people over 50. We're talking about a public health benefit being blocked by institutional politics.
What about the economics? Why is USTA so threatened by pickleball?
Follow the money. 90% of USTA's revenue comes from the US Open Tennis Tournament. Their own board minutes talk about how broadcasters, tennis retailers, coaches, and facilities have embraced pickleball to drive engagement and diversify revenue streams. They see pickleball as an existential threat to their business model.
So this isn't really about tennis versus pickleball. It's about USTA's bottom line.
That's certainly part of it. But there's also this sense of entitlement to public courts. They talk about defending tennis-related investments as if these public facilities belong to tennis players rather than the broader community.
Let's zoom out for a moment. Seattle is just one city. How widespread is this?
USTA has conducted these assessments in at least 11 cities: Dallas, Columbus, Georgia, Chattanooga, Moore, Oklahoma, and others. They're presenting this as a service to parks departments, but it's really about advancing their agenda.
And they're not hiding it. They're actually bragging about it at conferences.
Right. At the 2024 National Recreation and Parks Association Conference, they're promoting their assessment tool and celebrating their success. Seattle's park superintendent was even there, participating in a session promoting USTA's approach.
That seems like a conflict of interest.
It raises questions about independence. How can a park superintendent fairly allocate resources between tennis and pickleball while simultaneously promoting USTA's agenda at national conferences?
What's the solution here? How do we get back to equitable allocation of public resources?
First, transparency. Parks departments need to base decisions on actual usage data and community demand, not on lobbying from interested parties. Second, representation. When you're making decisions that affect pickleball players, you need pickleball players at the table.
And maybe some skepticism when a sports organization offers to help you with assessments.
Exactly. USTA positioned themselves as neutral experts, but their own board minutes show they had a clear agenda to combat pickleball. That's not neutral advice. That's lobbying.
What can people do if they think this is happening in their community?
Great question. First, find out if your parks department has worked with USTA on any assessments. Request public records. Ask questions at city council meetings. And support your local pickleball advocacy groups. They need a voice in these discussions.
And for tennis players who might be listening,
Look, this isn't about tennis versus pickleball. A lot of pickleball players used to play tennis. Many play both sports. This is about fair access to public resources. Tennis doesn't need to lose for pickleball to win, but the current system where one sport gets to veto another's access isn't sustainable.
Sarah, as we wrap up, what's your biggest takeaway from this story?
It's how vulnerable our public recreation system is to institutional capture. USTA used their expertise and resources to influence policy in ways that serve their interests rather than the community's needs. And they did it largely in the shadows until public records requests brought it to light.
It's a reminder that public resources belong to the public, not to the organizations that have historically controlled them.
Exactly. And the good news is that when people understand what's happening, they can push back. Seattle's story isn't over. There are still opportunities to create more equitable policies.
Before we go, let's be clear about what we're not saying. We're not saying tennis players are the enemy, or that tennis shouldn't exist on public courts.
Right? We're saying that decisions about public recreation should be made transparently, based on community needs and usage data, not backroom lobbying by organizations with financial interests in the outcome.
And that includes pickleball organizations, too, if they start acting the same way.
Absolutely. The principle here is about fair process and equitable access to public resources, regardless of which sport we're talking about.
That's our show for today. You can find all the documents we referenced, including USTA board minutes and Seattle Parks emails, at timeforpickleball.com/USTA 2025. Once again, that is timeforpickleball.com/USTA 2025.
And if you're a tennis player, pickleball player, or just someone who cares about fair access to public recreation, share this story.
Thanks for listening to Public Courts. I'm Mike Rodriguez.
And I'm Sarah Chen. Until next time, keep playing, whatever sport makes you happy.